Right there. What's up, Nate?
Good to see you. I
Hey,
am.
man.
My software says that I am streaming, but I'm not seeing that I'm streaming on YouTube. So,
Okay,
gonna try to figure this out real quick.
sure.
Okay, great. I am streaming on YouTube. So I'm gonna go ahead
Nice.
and get that pulled up so I can look at the live chat. Um, I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes before I get started. Um, in the meantime, tell me about a cool plant that you've seen recently, Harry.
Oh, man. Um, let's see. Oh, Rus aromatica,
Oh, that's a
the
good one.
fragrance sumac. Now that one was planted at the south end of Mud Island, which is like this kind of sandbar park in downtown Memphis. But it has begun to kind of pop up in near closer to like the riprap along the river. And that reminds me of another one, Amorpha fruticosa, I saw kind of in the same area. But I love both of those. Um, very cool. So one wild, one cultivated. What about you?
Cool plant that I've seen recently. I wasn't expecting the reciprocal question. Um, uh, I got this really cool plant from Backhouse Gardens. I can't say the scientific name of it. It's like
Yeah.
figwort is the common name. It's a
Oh, yeah. Okay.
yes. So, and I'm
Yeah.
really enjoying
Familiar?
those little maroon flowers. Looking out for
Yeah.
the pollinators. Allegedly, wasps are the main pollinators of that, which I'm excited about. I haven't told my wife that yet. Hopefully, she doesn't watch this stream.
Yeah. 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 That's a cool. Actually, Robert Ballard gave me one of those.
Oh, cool.
And then I saw it with Alan Trentley. He's with the Division of Natural Areas, but he invited me to explore. He's a really great dude, like yourself, real smart. And but we did some exploring in the Bluff Hills. So I don't know if that's the only place I've ever seen it that I can think of. But I thought it was cool. It's a neat eco read. I love it, exploring the Bluff Hills.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and do something before I realize that everything is out of whack, which
Sure.
is make sure that the window is open. I'll probably do something. People who are watching the stream are probably like, "This doofus doesn't know how to stream," because I've set up the audio output to collect your voice in a particular scene in my software, and then I put the scene on the welcome screen. And so it might not have picked up your voice for the past few minutes, but that's only
Oh,
been
okay.
2 3 minutes of talking. Hopefully we'll get plenty more talking in. So for
Sure.
in case y'all didn't hear him, he was talking about his favorite plants that he's seen recently. Um, Amorpha or lead bush, and Rus
Yeah.
aromatica, which
Yeah.
is
Fragrance.
fragrant sumac. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and jump right in here with an introduction for those of you who do not know Habitat Harry yet. You should. He is an awesome nature influencer, one of the best nature educators I've seen. Very enthusiastic, uh, is doing a very good job of putting out content that is fun to watch and educational. And I'm glad to introduce him to y'all and ready to jump into this conversation.
Man, thank you. That was super nice of you to say that. That is awesome. And I appreciate you asking me to do this because I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. I was telling you that before we started this because of how active you are in Mississippi Native Plant Society and on iNaturalist with your identifications. So, I mean, you played a major role in where I'm at today and why I think the way I think. And I appreciate you inviting me on.
Thank you for coming on. So I'm going to get this started off with tell us why we should care about native plants.
Well, it started as an interest, and I think now it's developed into a fascination. And I will often say that I wish I could. I wish I could. I had a pair of glasses that I could put on at any time and look around in any particular site to see what it looked like before colonization, or a few hundred years ago, or even go at certain points throughout time, just so I had a clear picture, and we can begin to illustrate that picture in our minds by looking on roadsides and power line right of ways and state parks and conservation projects. And I think the deeper you go, the more you realize how much we have impacted the landscape around us and how crucial it is to put pieces of it back and save the pieces that are left, because there are very few intact pieces left. And that's what there's significance to pollinators. There's significance to wildlife, natural history, and to us, how we use these plants. Is every generation is losing it a little bit more, unfortunately. So I think it's important that we all learn about it, because I look at the world completely differently than I would have 15 years ago. I mean, and I love it. It's a little bit sad at times, but painting that picture like the glasses is probably one of my favorite things of all time to do. So I think that's why.
Really interesting stuff there. What I'm curious in is, so one, I want everyone to know that while a lot of people talk online about restoring native habitat, bringing things back to our houses and our landscapes and our wild areas, Harry actually does this. He's done a lot of planting and restoration type work, especially in Northwest Mississippi. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned is how 15 years ago you would have seen this entirely different. So, can you give us an overview of how you've developed and progressed, and what got you into planting natives and creating great content online?
Yes, I would love to. And I tend to ramble. So if you need to interrupt me, or if I need to stop at any point, please, because I'll talk about myself. And I'm hoping that the things I have to say about my story might resonate with someone else that's listening and maybe thinking about landscapes in a traditional sense. And maybe some epiphanies or light bulbs will go off. But my interest began, my dad started a canoe and kayak rental in Fayette County, Tennessee, on the Ghost River, which is a state natural area in Tennessee, right on the Mississippi state line. And I grew up canoeing and kayaking out there, and driving from the Hernando, Mississippi area to Pickwick on Highway 72 in Mississippi and back. And we would often stop and canoe and kayak, and it turned into a canoe and kayak rental. And there was a point in my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I wasn't making the best decisions, and I needed to make money. And I knew I liked to work outside and with my hands, so I got a job in commercial landscaping. And I started with irrigation. And when I found out that I was going to have twin babies, I said, "Hey, what's the quickest avenue that I can make more money?" And they said, "Well, you could become a spray tech, and without being a manager, you could make the most money being a horticulture lawn and turf technician using chemicals." So I said, "Okay, that's what I'll do." And I got a license. I got a certification and then a license. And I was spraying that blue dye all over turf grass, all over Memphis and North Mississippi, and wondering why I was doing it, and wondering why I was in my head. I'm thinking, well, I started at the river and that's what I wanted to do. But here I am with this blue stuff all over me. And I need to get back to that. So I got a job with, at the time it was called Riverfront Development Corporation. Today it's called Memphis River Parks, but as a landscape manager for a parks department in Memphis. And at the time they were beginning to make this transition into native plant and naturalistic landscapes within the parks. And now today it's like a 13-mile stretch of mostly native plant landscapes in those parks. At the time, they were just beginning this transition, and I met a landscape architect named Meg Johnson from Groundswell Design Group, and her plans, her plant lists had plants I recognized from the Ghost River. It's like river oats and cardinal flower and taxodium, bald cypress, and tupelo trees. Things that were some of the only plants I knew at the time, and were like, wow, this is so cool. And I was kind of trained to think that you couldn't have rewild, that doesn't work in traditional landscape. And I quickly dove headfirst into native plant and naturalistic landscapes. And I'm very grateful for her because she inspired that.
Great. So you were part of the transformation of Memphis from just lawn, the only color was the blue dye, to a nice natural ecosystem that's constructed, but it's constructed with humans in mind, humans at the forefront. We don't want to be planting poison ivy and stuff, but
Right.
also
Yeah.
with wildlife, with birds and bugs in mind. So that's
Yes.
awesome
Yeah.
that you're a part of that.
I know. I'm so grateful because had I not been, I may have kept doing what I was doing, and I wasn't enjoying it. And I was curious as to why we didn't use native plants, but yeah, that needed to happen. I think that was meant to be, because it set me, on a path that led to, I took a deep dive from there on. Once I saw what she was planning to do in the parks, and was told differently for the first time, like, hey, this is a different way of doing things, that you're working with nature. You're not constantly facing an uphill battle. You don't have to put irrigation systems in and keep everything watered all the time when it gets too hot in the summer. You don't have to use zoysia grass and Bermuda grass for turf lawns on every property. You don't have to use chemicals. It was just that was foreign to me, and it felt like a relief to hear that. It was like, wow. So that was kind of my start in that. So
It's awesome.
very grateful. Yeah.
And in a moment, I'm going to ask you, for people who are wanting to get involved in that sort of thing,
Yeah.
what resources they should dive into. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to Nadine. Thank you so much for letting me know that the stream wasn't quite working the way that I thought it was. And I'm going to read a comment from a commenter. Memphis River Parks does great work. I don't know if it was you, but the Tom Lee landscaping is inspiring. And so I'll give you
Yeah.
a chance to respond to that if that was you, but I just want to let everyone know who's watching this. Feel free to comment. We gladly will read it out. If you don't want us to read out your comment, you can just note that in the comment and I won't read it aloud. But any comment that looks interesting, what we're going to engage with. So I'll reread the comment for you, Harry. Memphis River Parks does great work. I don't know if it was you, but the Tom Lee landscaping is inspiring.
Oh, it's massively inspiring. It was not me. I think that project is way bigger than my capacity. That was a landscape architecture firm named Scape, SCAPE, and they're massive scale, really worldwide, I believe. But I take care of and was involved in. So before Tom Lee, there was a park called River Garden, which is at Riverside Drive and Bass Pro Drive, or formerly Jefferson Avenue, Bass Pro Drive. But it kind of changes right there. But right on the riverfront by the Tennessee Welcome Center. And that's a 2-acre park and that's where I met Meg Johnson with Groundswell Design Group. And she actually ended up working for the parks later and contacted me to pick up on the maintenance for that park and a few others around Tom Lee. I think right now there's a large landscape firm called RCI. I think they're regional that did the installation and is doing the maintenance for Tom Lee. But if you haven't gotten a chance to go check that out, Nate, you would love it. If you're ever up here, I have a list of places that I think we would go. And Nadine, I heard you were watching. Any of y'all, please, because I've been wanting to come down to. I have a list of places for Jackson. I made a trip last year down to the Gulf Coast, but I think Northwest Mississippi and the Memphis area, we just don't really associate with our wild areas, our natural areas, or native plant landscapes, and we do have some really amazing places to see. So that is certainly one of them.
To come get shown is it Pachyradubia? Is that what it is that you've posted some pictures of on iNaturalist and some other of these?
Yes.
Like they're Western species, but they show up in Northwest Mississippi along I-55. There seems to be a lot of remnants of what used to be.
Yes, and actually, since getting into native plant gardens, actually thanks to you, and we were talking about this before. I started uploading on iNaturalist a couple years ago, and did not understand it. I treated it like a one and done ID app, similar to the Picture This or others. Like once it gave you an ID, I thought, okay, that might be it. See you later. And you famously started questioning, hey, is that planted? Is that cultivated? And I think I've told you this, but I thought at first I got kind of defensive, like, well, why does that matter? Who is this native guy? And then I actually hopped on a desktop and looked at how many identifications you had made, and then put two and two together that you were Nate on Mississippi Native Plant Society. And then I had an epiphany. And since then I have gone down this path of kind of steering away from native gardens and landscape and getting way into kind of our lost ecosystems, our lost habitats and there's very few left in the Lush Plains, and it just because of agriculture. I mean, I think that it was so early, it's heavily altered due to agriculture, and now it's so developed around Memphis that you've really got to find some scraps, and that is a good scrap where that Pachyradubia is. And I've got to mention John Keys. John Keys, and right now it's not being mowed right now. Typically, Mississippi Department of Transportation would have already mowed the site, and Pachyradubia, you wouldn't see Rudbeckia alismifolia, which was it was grandiflora. That wouldn't have a chance to flower. But right now it's unmowed. It needs some maintenance, but it's which I plan to do, but it's unmowed, and that's big thanks to John Keys for kind of writing up why that site is so important. And some people at Department of Transportation were able to read that and get their hands on it, and actually,
Awesome.
we got them to stop. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So, very cool,
man.
And he really eloquently put it better in that it's a short document, but just into words better than I could ever say it. But just how altered the Lush Plains are and how unique this ecosystem is. And when you look at these range maps of the species, you're right. I mean, they are very similar to these western prairies, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, that and there's this one little piece over here in Northwest Mississippi, like on the side of I-55,
Yeah.
like by the Toyota dealership. But anyway, but yeah, that Pachyradubia is unreal. I mean, and I think it's got extreme ornamental value. Like that leaf, if you see the photo, it reminds me of a what do you call that, soft lamb's ear? Yeah. And with that pretty yellow bloom too. I mean, that is a cool plant.
And then I want to get all of the fuzzy silver leaf plants, Pachyradubia, all the Antinarias, all these different things. It's just like all these cool fuzzy leaves that it's just so perfect. Yeah.
Yeah,
That falls
I
pretty
agree.
high up in my list of dream gardens to design after a poison garden where everything's toxic and a hypericum garden where everything's a hypericum. Um, do you have any dream
Oh,
gardens like
cool,
that?
dude. Yeah, that is awesome. Speaking of that, that's one thing that, and I'm not trying to notice that, on my videos or posts I make, we have a lot of species that are toxic if you ingest a lot of native species that if you ingest them, they can be toxic to humans. And it kind of, does it ever, I don't want to say frustrate you, but I'll try to highlight a native species for its benefit to wildlife. And in like one of the top comments will be like, yeah, it's cool, but that's poisonous. I'm like, you're taking away the whole point of what I'm talking about. Like, nobody's trying to eat it. Please don't go eat it. But there's so many beautiful toxic plants. Like, anyway, I don't know if do you get that a lot when on posts or Native Plant Society comments and stuff?
Yes, I have seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get why they're doing it because there's two sides to the coin. One is that for a lot of people, their context is they grow up in a yard with young kids who are running around
Right.
trying to eat everything.
Yeah.
And in my experience, young kids actually are pretty good at not eating toxic things. But
Yeah.
when you're dealing with things like coral bean that is used as rat poison in some areas of the
Yeah.
world because its seeds are so toxic, and they're bright red and alluring to kids, kind of look like candy. I can definitely see why you
Interesting.
wouldn't want that in a yard.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's it. That is very interesting. But you make a good point. I mean, I have 8-year-old twins, and you never know what, especially my son, he may be, usually running around barefoot, and who knows, he'll eat just about anything. So,
Yeah.
that you have a very valid point. So it's good to know that they are, but also I think I'm an advocate for, maybe the value to ecology and the aesthetic appeal of the plant is what
Yes, and
I'm
the
like,
funny
yeah.
thing, yeah, I agree with you. I'm the type of person who would include toxic plants in a landscape that has children because I'm
Yeah.
aware that the risk to them is way less than the risk of just putting them in a car. Um,
Oh
because
yeah,
like the number of
that's a
children
good
who
point.
have died from pokeweed in all of human history, I'm not sure there's a single recorded case, even though it is quite
Yeah.
toxic.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
but number of children who die in a car accident every year,
Sure.
huge. Every week, huge. So it's just a
Yeah.
matter of
Puts
context
things
and
in
risk, and
perspective.
different people have different perspectives. But yeah, I do agree that if you're making a post promoting a plant, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. And maybe some people who know me on Facebook would say, if you live in glass house, don't throw stones because I comment invasive on a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, touche. That's all I
Um,
can say.
my favorite is the planted question mark, because that one got me. I told you I took offense to it the first few times because I didn't understand iNaturalist, and like I said, it's like this guy is asking me if everything's planted. What does it matter? I just want to know what it is. And then it's when I pressed that explore button, I was like, oh, this guy Nate is sharp. I was like, I get it. But that's a huge. I may have told you this earlier. That's a huge service to the native plant community, or the people that are ecology enthusiasts. When you're identifying, and you've got to know that. Did you plant it, or is this part of a remnant plant community that's occurring? I mean, you got to kind of sift through all those observations, and you can discover some things.
Viewers will be wondering, okay, so what if it's a native plant and I plant it? It's native. What's the difference between it and a wild plant? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, actually, I have some pretty strong feelings and thoughts on that, because so after I started, this kind of goes in sequence with the story I began. So I started with Meg and was working for the parks, And then I worked under Daniel Gross, who's the director of horticulture at Memphis Botanic Garden, for a couple of years, and we became great friends. And I got all this experience installing native plant landscapes and maintaining native plant landscapes. But one of the things that bothered me during that time period is I couldn't find them when I would, when it's vacation time. Me and the family will go to state parks, natural areas. I like to pull over on the side. If I see a cool looking creek, I'm that weird dude that pulls over on the side of the road and like jumps down and looks in it, and I'll be wondering what's in there if I pass it up. So, I'm like, man, where are some of these species? Like an example would be like Baptisia australis. Like, hey, where is it? I plant it all the time. I've never seen it in the wild. So I think making that distinction is important. And I think that I'm in an unusual area where many of the native species that are in our plant communities, we haven't really got a great description of these communities. Like there's never been one established. And we're kind of in the middle of figuring that out. So if you go to the native plant section of a nursery, you're going to find a lot of things with ranges that go up the coastal plain all the way to Virginia, like these super popular native plant cultivars like Rudbeckia fulgida. Like you're not going to find Rudbeckia fulgida anywhere around here. You're going to find Herta and you're going to find Elismafolia, but you're probably going to find Rudbeckia Herta Goldstern in the native plant section at any given nursery around here. We have Amsonia salicifolia, thanks to John Keys for helping with that ID, and some of the SGI folks who came to look at this Amsonia we found here. But you're not going to find Amsonia hubrichtii. So in my garden, I want salicifolia. I don't, I'm not going to deny that hubrichtii isn't a beautiful plant, but I am partial to the plants that, are barely hanging in there despite all odds here, like around me. And that's important to me. Another one I found with high ornamental value recently was Penstemon tubiflorus in DeSoto County and Fayette County, Tennessee. And that thing is gorgeous, man. I mean, I could see, from off the road so far away, I thought there was like an empty white bucket out in the middle of that field. Like I was like, didn't even think it was a plant because it was so white and stood out, as a big flower. But I told you I like to rant. I hope that kind of answers the question.
It sure does. Yeah. I think you've given some very good reasons for why people should look at the local plant diversity instead of just going to the native section of a nursery or buying from an online nursery. Although that in many cases that is the best you can do, especially if you're on a budget and you don't have the time and bandwidth to go and learn all these things. So I think it's up to people like me and like you to educate people with what we're doing, posting videos about it, and also to start planting these things, cultivating them.
Yes,
but really,
I completely
right now we're
agree.
at the raising awareness stage because realistically, I've talked to nursery growers across the state, people who have tried to introduce natives for years, and there just is not enough demand in many areas to sustain a native plant nursery. There's some people who are doing a really good job. Camp Creek is doing great. I think Camp Creek is succeeding in part because they're selling over a larger area. They've got the shipping down. House Garden seems to be doing pretty well. There's a In Bloom Gardens and Gifts in Crystal Springs, I think it is. And there are a bunch of others that I'm not mentioning, other nurseries that are trying to include more native plants. But it still is economically difficult because people, like I was talking to the Camp Creek folks, and they had all these cultivars of purple coneflower that were almost sold out. And then they had dozens and dozens of locally grown purple coneflower, and no one wanted to buy it. And it's just like that's the coolest thing ever. Like they're so much more robust. They live longer. They're prettier, in my opinion.
I agree. I completely agree. And that's not easy to find. Like Echinacea purpurea, like from the black belt or from near the black, like, yeah, give it to me, please. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I want. But yeah, but I think if people knew, and we could get through to them with just like what we're doing now, and would understand the significance. And I find that I find this disconnect around here, because we have a good community in Memphis, but because it's a city, it's very gardening focused. And I used to be only gardening focused until the iNaturalist epiphany around that time, and until I started to, start to connect some dots about, what's truly native around here. But if we could, that's what my hope is that, folks like us, and with, creating content or little videos or whatever I'm doing, is that I can show people how special the plants in our local plant communities are, because especially here, I mean, like I said, they're barely hanging in there. These are sites that, and my buddy Joel Gullidge, he said something that really resonated with me. He recently visited a friend in Texas, and he said that his friend's wife was like, "Why are you wanting to go look in the power line and more excited about that than going to Lady Bird Johnson?" And he's like, "Well, I want to do both, but you're in a special you're in the, Blackland Prairie of Texas. Like, I want to see the power line." And that's exactly how I think. Like, give me a power line or a roadside, and I'm just as good there as I am in, a state park or a designated, natural area. If it's got this intact species, it's fascinating to me. But
Yeah, absolutely. We got some good questions in the chat. So first, I'm going to go
cool.
ahead and say that when you asked Nadine to come and do some hikes with you earlier, she said, "Yes, I'm in."
Nice.
So that's great.
Excellent.
Someone asked, "Is there a source for these native plants in DeSoto County or Marshall County? I live outside Bahalia. Your connection is breaking up a bit."
Oh man.
Thank you for letting us know that. So a source outside of DeSoto County. Where is DeSoto County? South Mississippi?
DeSoto is where I'm at. It's the
Oh.
far northwest corner. Yeah. But I see why you would think south, because of DeSoto National Forest.
Yeah.
So they're both, which is funny. But DeSoto and Marshall are next to each other in northwest Mississippi, and Camp Creek is definitely the closest native plant nursery. Now there's a place called Homestead Farms in Tate County, and they don't specialize in natives, and they actually have a lot of species that I wish they wouldn't carry. Just to be honest, but in the back corner of the perennial section, where no one goes, there are a ton of awesome native plants back there, and they have grown a lot of cool stuff from seed. And they're good people. They just they don't. I think probably it's probably a they've got to make a living thing, so they're selling a lot of those traditional shrubs that. I mean, there's suburbs going up everywhere around here. So unfortunately, when they're done building those, like those Indian hawthorns and Laura pedalums and, crepe myrtles, they sell just as many of those, but I find some treasures in that spot. So I would say Camp Creek, number one. And then if you can educate yourself and find those species, you can go to some local nurseries and find some cool native plants around here, and in Memphis too.
Places in Memphis, someone said hyper local native seeds and plants are so hard to come by in Jackson and Memphis. Do you have any sources in Memphis?
I would go through the community. I wish that was something like, so Shay Staten, he lives here in Hernando. He works at Sardis, and that dude is giving me seed that he's collected all the time. He'll even germinate them. And he literally today came by and gave me a wild yucca from the Sand Baron of Fayette County, Tennessee, that he germinated. And you see, so I think that if you get involved with the community and make friends, and Memphis Native Plant Enthusiasts and Mississippi Native Plant Society and find this, community of people like myself, Joel Gullidge, Shay Staten, that, we could help you with that, but also again, Camp Creek. I know it's an hour from here. It's an hour from where I live, but it is worth the drive every time. I would much rather drive to Camp Creek and get what I need quickly, and I'm going to get great service, than go to and drive to 5 or 6 different nurseries looking for the things I need, in the greater Memphis area, And there's some good local growers in the Memphis group too. Like I'll make good friends with them. And there's someone that's been posting recently, and I need to make friends with her. She's in Benton County. I think it's Josephine.
Josephine
does that ring a bell?
or something like that?
Yeah. She looks like she's doing some cool stuff. And
Yes.
Benton County's right next to Marshall, and these are extremely. They have way more remnants. It's kind of hovering that line between the Lusk Plains and the North Hilly Gulf Coastal Plains. So they have like these, really diverse different communities because they have a little bit of both in them, both of those ecoregions. But she's doing some good stuff. And then there's a guy named Adam Queen. Queen's Nursery in the Memphis area. He's doing some great stuff too. And I can't wait to use them more. And there's some other people I know. Dana Sands and Tara. They're in the Memphis community. I think just making friends. I think making friends that you could find seed. I would love for it to one day where you could buy hyper local seed. That's more of a
cutout. It looks like you're being distorted by an interdimensional warp or something. I'm going to turn off my camera so that hopefully the quality will be a bit better. There we go. I'm not moving around anyway. You're much more animated than I am. We are coming to close to the end of our time. I think we have 3 more minutes before Zoom kicks us off. So I'm going to let you finish your thought before you froze.
I think that all I wanted to say before it's over is that